Hello everyone, today's video we're gonna look how to add particle systems to our scenes to create dust or to have molecules move around. So I've done a video similar to this, but this is gonna go into more detail. The idea is to have this be a feature in BioBlender, but for now I got someone requesting it, so I'm doing this video just showing how to do this manually, but in the future it's gonna get much easier once it's fully implemented in BioBlender. Alright, so one thing to notice is I'm also on version 3.0 alpha. However, all the things I'm going to be showing work as well in version 2.9. BioBlender is still not fully functional in version 3.0, but I've been working on this because I've been trying to transfer it to version 3.0. But alright, so let me go ahead and this is how it would look in Cycles, but let me go on to Eevee. So it's a little more, so I can move more in the scene. So as you see here, the idea today is to create this particle and this effect, but anything else, as you can see, it's generated with BioBlender. So here I just imported a red blood cell, and then I imported ubiquitin, and then this one I distribute around. The way to do this is like if you press on the object and shift D, then you have a duplicate, and you can shift it from the camera view, maybe get it closer and move it around. So I think this one went pretty far, but you see the point. You just duplicate your object and you can move it around, move it in Y, change the rotation. So this is a static scene. In regard to the proteins, I haven't animated those, but if you see, if I press spacebar here, the particles are animated. So that's what we want to see, how to add these particles, and we can change these particles to be molecules or proteins, and then they would have this motion. So this is what I'm going to try to show today. As you see, it's a full setup with lights and force fields. Other than that, the other thing that's new here, it's or the other thing I've added, it's this membrane emitter from BioBlender. So all I did there was import a planar membrane, as we would normally do, and then I went into edit mode, and then all I did was basically move this in the z-axis. So as you see here, I have proportional and editing, so I can press G, C, and then with this scroll bar I can have it affect more, and so basically I was just I could have something like this. This is just basically gonna change how it looks in the final render. I can go back here, so this is just adds this wave in, but you can play around it and change it. Alright, so to create this effect, let me go ahead and open a new Blender file. So we are gonna go into a new Blender file. Alright, so we are here in Blender. First thing I'm gonna do is import a ubiquitin. I'm gonna go ahead and also give it a particular material. Let's work with the electric materials today, and let me change the color just so it's a little shinier. Maybe something that looks like this, so we can go into cycles here and visualize our protein. Alright, so that's looking good. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is add a for example, I'm gonna add a vesicle. So this is gonna add our vesicle. There's something going on with version 3.0 that for cycles it looks like this. I'm not sure really why. It's been it's in development still. So what I'm gonna do now is change my render engine to Eevee, and let's work on Eevee from now on. Notice that I have ambient occlusion activated, and I also have I'm also gonna activate bloom and screen space reflections. I'm gonna have all those three activated. In film, I'm gonna have this time I'm actually gonna have the actual film show here, and then I'm gonna go to the world settings to just change my setup. So let me go into shading here, and then I'm gonna go change object to world, and then we're basically gonna replicate. So this is not default. Usually you shouldn't have this environment texture, but you can do that. So this is what regular by default Blender would come as. I just have that added into my default file, but what you can do to have that is have an environment texture, and then we can go ahead and plug this here. I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate this background, and then I'm gonna add a light path node as well, and then I'm gonna basically add, last thing is gonna be a mix shader. I'm gonna mix these two shaders. So this is just a nice setup to have, even if you're not working with BioBlender. This is just a nice lighting setup to have always in your scenes. And then we're gonna grab the camera array and put it here as the factor, and then we're gonna go here all the way down to black. And then last thing we have to do, we can go here into our render view. As you see, everything looks purple because we haven't opened a HDRI here. So the way to get an HDRI, you can have a folder with all your HDRIs, but I usually use the ones default in Blender. So I'm gonna go ahead onto my Blender folder. I have a couple of versions here. I'm gonna go into the one I'm using, 3.0, 3.0 data files, then Studio Lights, World, and then these are the default HDRIs. In fact, you could download HDRIs and copy them into this folder, and then they would appear here. If you turn this off, they would appear here. So as you see, these the ones that are showing here are exactly the ones we have here. So for now, let me just select the Forest EXR and have it added there. All right, and let me activate these two things again. All right. So let me go ahead and all right, why is this showing black? Oh, okay, we have to invert these two here. Yeah, there you go. So you need to have the background, the color black in the bottom, and then the HDRI on the top. And as you see, all this did was basically give us a black background while we still have a lights coming from the HDRI, but we do not see that HDRI. We're gonna see it in some reflections, but other than that, it's not. As you see here, you can tell there is an HDRI in the reflections, but other than that, it gives us a black background that we can even change the color, and then this is gonna control the color of our background if we want some in blue and so on. I'm just gonna keep it in black for now. All right, so that's the world setup that we're gonna have. Now we're gonna go to layout again here. All right, so the question was how to so usually what we would do to have molecules or have a particle system added to our scene is we would create a molecules collection here, and then for example here I'm gonna add one UVQ, and I'm gonna press on my ball membrane emitter, and I'm gonna press emit, and that's what's gonna generate is a bunch of ubiquity in here. And then maybe I'm gonna go a little I'm gonna remove some of these particles, so maybe just 100 proteins here, and then if I press spacebar, then they're gonna shift towards my inside my emitter. We can maybe change this cross section to 0 so we get something that looks like this. And the reason they're accumulating in the middle is because they're following the origin, so they're all trying to get to this origin. That's why they accumulate in the middle. However, maybe we want a different effect. So we're gonna see how to do that. But the reason this has this behavior is because it was made for it to follow an object. So if I press spacebar and then move my membrane emitter, and this is not a good idea while I have particles on it because it's gonna become very laggy. But yeah, that was the idea for it. But I'm working on another implementation that it adds that we're basically gonna go through that today manually. So the first thing I'm gonna do is delete that, and then I'm gonna go back here. Let me set this again to 0.5 so we have all our sphere. So to be a little more similar to what the person had, I'm gonna go and scale this on the z-axis so it's not completely and I did that during edit mode, so make sure you do that in edit mode. Alright, so I have something that looks like this. Other thing I'm gonna do is grab it and press Shift D so I have a duplicate, and then escape so it stays in the same place. And I'm gonna maybe name one of them, I'm gonna name it volume here in the top. I'm gonna go to the modifiers, and then I'm gonna basically remove all the modifiers for that volume one. So as you see, it looks like a it just looks like a white surface, right? If we hide our ball membrane, then this is what we duplicated. That's all we have here. All right, I'm gonna grab that volume, and then I'm gonna go into materials, and then I'm gonna add a new material. This you then you wanna go to surface, and then you're gonna remove this material that it has added, and then you wanna go to volume, and then add a principal volume here. So I've added a principal volume. Let's go with the densities to something like 0.4, or values from 0.2 to 0.4 are gonna work okay. All right, and also let's start setting up our cameras, or maybe somewhere over here. Let's set up our camera somewhere over there. All right, and now the other thing we're gonna do to this object is that we're gonna add a particle emit. So we're gonna go into particle settings, and we're gonna press the plus button here. We're gonna make sure it's emitter is selected, and then we're gonna change the number to something like 100. frame start 1 and frame end also 1. That way we all our particles are within here. As you see, it's not putting anything inside. We're gonna change that in a second. Lifetime, this is gonna be the length of your simulation of your entire scene, of your entire animation. So if you change this value here, make sure you also change it here. Otherwise, some particles are gonna disappear getting close to that, depending on this value you select here. Alright, source, I'm gonna change this to volume. And then this is looking okay, just volume. Yep, closing source. Cache, we don't really have to go here. Velocity, I'm gonna turn off normal velocity, so my particles are not gonna have a normal velocity. For now, they're just gonna fall to the ground, as you see. Other thing I'm gonna change here is rotation. I'm gonna check rotation, and I'm gonna go randomize all the way, and then also phase and randomize phase all the way, and then that's it for rotation. Physics, we're gonna add some Brownian motion in a second, but I will come back to physics in a second. Render, these are an important one. You wanna select, instead of path, you wanna select collection. You don't wanna show the emitter, so remove show emitter. Scale, let's leave it at 1. And then the collection we want is the molecule collection again. So as you see, that already changed to my ubiquitin in this case. Like right now things are to scale if I leave this to 1, but as you see, the membrane I imported is, if I show that, it's like things are getting crowded. So maybe let's change this to 0.2, but or no, that's too tiny, 0.5, maybe something like this. But be aware that that is already changing the scale of everything, so you would also have to think about how the lipids scale. All right, but for now, that's working correctly. Let's do keep working on our settings here. So we also want to go to view per display, disable show no, we actually want to keep show emitter. That way we see our volume. And in fact, in render, we also want to show emitter. Otherwise, our volume would disappear. All right. Let me see. What else do we need here? We can also, like, so let's bring another protein into our scene. Something like this. I think this is this should be hemoglobin. So let's go ahead and use BioBlender to get hemoglobin into our scene. There it is. Let's give it a dielectric material. Let's go into material settings, press on the second button there, and let's change the color. So if we go here into the base color, let's hemoglobin is in red blood cells, so let's give it a red tone. Okay, that's good. And I'm gonna drag it onto molecules, and as soon as I do that, you see everything, it appears here. We can play with the count. So if we go to particle settings, you can do use count, and then go in here, and then this is gonna be basically, if I have 2 ubiquitins, that's gonna be out of all the particles, is gonna be distributed in a ratio 2 to 1. So if I have 2 and 2, it's the same as having 1 and 1. So that would be the same. But if I have something like 10 to 1, then it's gonna be 10 times more dense ratio of 10 to 1 ubiquitin to hemoglobin in this case. Alright, so that's looking okay. Now let's add some motion into all these particles. So what we can do here is, if we go, if I press spacebar, everything goes down to the ground as before. Let me go ahead and change the color of my volume in real quick. So this is gonna give it also like how your scene is gonna look. So maybe something blue. We can go with something blue. Alright, so that's looking good. So if I press play again, everything goes to the ground. The reason for that is we need to turn off gravity. So the way to do that is, I'm gonna go back to the particles, and then in physics, no, not in physics, I wanna go to field weights. And once I found field weights, I'm gonna go ahead and turn gravity off. And now if I press spacebar, everything stays still because there is no initial velocity for our particles. So that's why I turn normal to 0. If I turn this back to 1, everything is gonna fly away from our scene. So we don't want that either. So let's keep this at 0. But what we're gonna do here is go to the physics, and then we're gonna do a Brownian motion. So let's turn this maybe to something like 5, and we can also turn damping and drag to something very small, so the motion gets damped. So let's see what the effect of this had. So as you see, now we're getting some random motion of our particles. We can maybe increase this to something like 15, and then that motion is gonna be much faster. We can maybe increase the damping as well, and so you can play with these values to see what different results you get. For now, I'm gonna leave it at 0.1 and maybe something like 30. However, once I start going to these high values, you're gonna see that most of my particles disappear from my camera because they're just flying away. So the way, and I'm not sure if there's a better way to do this, but this is the way I've kind of like to do it. So I'm gonna go ahead and add a force field, a wind force field here. I'm gonna move that. So let me go into viewport, and then I'm gonna move that. So group X or GX. Let's so in like 2. Yeah, 2 is looking alright. Then we're gonna rotate it. So R, and then Y. We want to do minus 90 degrees, so it's facing towards my emitter here. I'm gonna do then Shift D, and then I'm gonna do -4. That way it's all the way in the other side. Rotate Y 180 degrees, right? We want to facing this way. Then we're gonna grab both. Shift D again. Rotate C 180. So not 180, 90 degrees in this case. So that way it's this way, and then Shift D one more time, and then we're gonna rotate. So R X 90. That way we have these wind force fields everywhere. We maybe want to scale these ones a little bit, so S, C, and get them closer here. All right, so that's looking, everything's looking symmetric, and then we can go ahead into our camera view, go back to our render view, and press play. And as you see, most of the particles are staying inside because of this wind that is pushing them. So that is a way to how to keep them inside, and you can play with the settings to change it, how this looks. For now, I'm gonna go ahead and activate this again, and then I'm gonna grab this, and then gonna do a cross section of 0. No, actually, let me keep it a cross section of -0.5, but let's set up our camera inside. So an easy way to move the camera inside is if you change this to view, then the C-axis is gonna be the normal of the screen. So we can do GC, and then we can even animate this to get like inside. But for now, let's just go here. Maybe we wanna rotate it inside of there. Oh no, for now let's keep it this way. All right. So this is the effect that we're getting. What I had before was a little bit different. So let's try to get something similar. One thing you have to do here is, for example, go to the camera settings and change this focal length to something like a little larger, something like 32, and that's gonna give you more field of view, right? And then we're gonna activate depth of field, and then one thing that we could do could be select a specific protein, but for now I'm gonna add a empty object, empty plane axis, and then I'm gonna, let's see where this plane axis is. Let me scale it, Control A, apply the scale. Let me put it something over here. Let me see how far that is from the camera. Yeah, that's okay. And then I'm gonna select my camera again, and then let's focus on that empty. So we're gonna select the empty, and then we're gonna select the f-stop to be something small, like 0.7. So as you see, the only thing that's on focus is that hemoglobin close to it, but things are gonna change, right? So in fact, what you could do is add an object and then parent it to the empty. That way, when the empty moves, you keep focusing on that object. That way you can change how it focuses, but for now it's just focusing on that at that distance, so everything in that distance gets into focus. Alright, so let's go ahead and change into cycles, see how this is looking in cycles. So as you see in cycles, the volume renders a little bit better. In Eevee, something that we can do to fix this is, let me see. Yeah, we can turn down the strength of our HDRI. That could help. In this case, I'm not really seeing the volume, so let me go ahead and maybe increase the density of the volume. So let me see. Yeah, maybe we can increase the density of this volume. All right, no, sorry, I forgot. In Eevee, the problem with Eevee is that you really need lamps instead of the HDRI to affect the volume. So that's why the other setup also had lamps. So we're gonna do a light, spotlight here. We're gonna move it. So let me go into top view with 7, move it over here, and then let me rotate it so it's pointing this way. So something like that. We can go into top view again. Let me rotate so it's looking this way. All right, so that's looking okay. And then let's go ahead and increase this to something like 1,000. There you go. So that's already creating this effect. Oh, not 5,000, 500, maybe a little less. No, actually 1,000 was looking pretty good. And then you can add different cameras to this. So let me change the volume, the color of the volume. So I can go to the volume. Maybe make it darker. Something like that looks like this. And then the other thing I can do is, again, as I was gonna mention before, you can change the strength of your HDRI. So in this case, in Eevee, is not gonna really. Oh, sorry, this is not the strength of the HDRI. Let's try it here. Yeah, so this is the strength of the HDRI. So you can have it in 0 for Eevee. I think that works pretty good. Right now, there is not much light because our sphere is outside. Our light is outside here, so we can maybe have it inside. And now this should be much better. We go into render view. Yeah, so this is looking much better. Again, you can add different light sources to this to have to change the effect and to have it look even better. But this is already looking really good. We can turn down the density by quite a bit, maybe like 0.2, and then I'm gonna just duplicate that light source. So I'm gonna do Shift D while I have the light spotlight. Shift D, maybe move it over here, rotate it. Oh, this is rotate C. Hold Shift to make small rotations. Something like this. So maybe the lights are too powerful, so let me turn them down to like 500. Maybe I can turn this one to 100 now that they're inside. Yeah, so even less, something like 50. And then we can have a light, some lights from the front. So if we duplicate this, put something over here. Let me see where this is going. I'm just pressing the numpad to change the different views here. So I'm gonna rotate this way. All right. So we're having the shadow of. I think we were having the shadow of this. So let me disappear those two. We're still getting these very big shadows. I think it's because one of the lamps is very close to. Let me go back to here so it's easy to work. Let me see, where are my lamps? Okay, so this one is pointing that way. Maybe scale it. Yeah, move it all the way inside. There you go. This one should be okay. So let's take a look at this. Yeah, there you go. I think, yeah, at least the big shadow disappear. Let me go back to the frame, first frame. We can turn off overlays. All right. So this is how this is looking. You can play around with it and get different effects, but this is just a quick way you have to do this. As I've mentioned before, this is going to get implemented into BioBlender. So that's the idea, so that this is much simpler to do in the future. We can, before we leave, let's try looking at this in cycles. So I'm using the new 3.0 version, which is faster than the old version because it now has this noise and so on. So we can activate the denoiser, have it be 64, and then here also 64. Change this to open image, albedo on normal, and then accurate. And maybe let me change this to 32 so it's faster. And you'll see with 32 samples and with the denoise, we're already gonna get a pretty good idea of what it's gonna look like. And the viewport is also much more responsive in 3.0. Yeah, there you go. So that's the denoise image. Again, you can increase the sample to have a better image, but or go back to Eevee if you just wanna see it, and then you can hit render once you are ready for it. One thing I want to show, so in this case I show how to do this with proteins. However, the original file I had that was this particles one. If you see here, I had a instead of actual proteins, so the proteins here were distributed manually, and I'm focusing on this hemoglobin in the middle. That's why everything else looks blurred. But the only difference I had here was that okay, my volume was a cube, but that really doesn't matter that much. But the main difference was that my particles here, if we go ahead and look at these particles, so let me select one of them, and where are these particles? Yeah, over here. So these are the three particles that I had. So instead of having proteins, I just had all these three low poly shapes that I basically created with adding a mesh icosphere and then playing with it to have these different shapes. And those are basically all these particles that we see in our scene. But again, the idea for this is to be by default in BioBlender, and then I will also probably add this .blend file into the BioBlender download. So if you like what you see and if you would like to have this add-on, you can go ahead and it's for sale in you can buy it from Blender Market, and the link will be below. If you like this video and you please make sure you leave a like and subscribe, and until the next time, see you.